Hey everyone, my name is Ali and I'm the co-founder of Infracost. Today I'm going to show you how you can add a new cloud service to the Infracost CLI. So first thing, I'm going to reduce the size of my video and move it over here. So I'm assuming you've already forked the repo and you've had a quick look at the contributing docs and done things like set up the development environment, which should be super quick as it's just a Golang application. And I'm also assuming you've downloaded this Mongo database dump, which isn't that big, and set up Mongo locally. We'll be using both of those. So the high-level process is you find an interesting cloud service you want to work on. Today we're going to add a Microsoft Azure resource, but the same process can be used for adding Google or an AWS resource. You then pretty much figure out a puzzle. I'll explain what I mean by a puzzle, which is mapping the prices from a cloud provider's pricing pages all the way to Terraform parameters. Once you figure out this puzzle, we'll bust out the editor and write some code and send a pull request. Then somebody on the Infracost team will review the pull request and give you some feedback, or just merge it if it's all good and ready. And that's it. That's the process. So fairly quick. It shouldn't take us more than an hour to add a simple resource. Other resources can get quite complicated, so if you're going through this process and you have any questions, join the Infracost community Slack, which is linked to from the README here, or add a comment to the GitHub issue and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So first up, I'm going to go to the project board and pick up the next Azure resource that's available. So I can see this is to do with app service certificates, putting in an order, essentially buying an SSL certificate. And I can see that Alistair has already kind of defined what the cost component we need to add is, and has two interesting links that I'll look at. So first up is the cloud providers pricing pages. So I can see I've actually not used app service before, so this is kind of new to me, but I'm looking for something related to SSL, as that's what the ticket mentioned. These things look like they're related to instances mostly. We're getting closer. This is to do with buying a domain name, and this looks like the one I want. So for a standard SSL certificate, Azure charges $70 per year roughly, and for a wildcard cert, $300. So I can also see that there's a Terraform resource here, and I'm kind of looking for the parameter names to see how I can tell if this certificate is standard or wildcard. Aha, that's the one I want. Perfect. So I can use the product type to figure out whether this certificate is either of those. I think that's kind of all I need at this stage. Next, I'm going to try and figure out the next piece of the puzzle, which is finding out these prices in the Mongo database. So for that, I'm going to switch over to Mongo, just starting a Mongo shell. I'm going to use the cloud pricing database dump that I got from the README. And then in the contributing docs, all the way into querying Mongo queries, we actually have some example queries that you can use to get going. So first up, I'm just going to check that I have the prices, and I can see I've got prices for AWS, Azure, and GCP. There is a main collection called products. In that, we can query using the distinct function to see kind of what services exist for Azure. So I'm looking for something around app service. There we go. That's the one I want. So seeing if there's anything else. Nope, that's the one I want. There's no other matches. So I'm going to copy paste that. So the service I want is actually this one's, so we can do regex lookups as well, but I don't need that just yet. I'm kind of exploring to see what there is. And I want to find all the product families that exist for this service. Nice and simple, just one called compute. So now I can Azure App Service, add the compute as a product family filter. And then, so I'm just going to find all the attributes that match on any of these to see what exists. Ooh, that's a lot. So I can see there's a lot of products that are matching on that. I'm wondering if I can zoom in, maybe just looking at the SKU names. So instead of doing attributes, I'm going to just look at the SKUs names that match that. Perfect. Okay, this is good. That was the domain name. Looks like those are the two I want. Standard SSL, 1-year certificate, and the wildcard one. So now I think I have enough pieces of the puzzle where I can try and actually find the price, the $69.99 price. So I'm gonna, instead of doing a distinct, I'm just gonna find all the products that match this specific filter set. I don't really care about the region. We'll come back to that one to see what exists. I kind of just want to match everything for now. And the SKU name, I'm just going to go for the 1-year certificate just now to see what I can find. Okay, that looks like it's matched 2 different products, and each product has one price. That's the $69.99 price I was looking for. It is the standard 1-year certificate. The region is global. I wonder what the other one is. It's probably to do with the price is different. It's actually more expensive. There we go. That's the region. So for some reason, Microsoft Azure is charging the US government, I guess, on those regions, more expensive rate for SSL certificates. I'm just going to switch back to the pricing page because I noticed I had a filter here that was on a US government region. If I switch to another region, does that price change? No. So this is interesting. Let me change to a different region. Yeah, it doesn't change. So it looks like the Azure pricing page is not matching the Azure APIs essentially for prices. In this case, I think I'm going to go with the Azure pricing database because it's seems to show there's different prices for these, and the prices aren't old. They're fairly like recent prices. So I think that's okay. What we could do, I suppose, is chat with Microsoft Azure to find out, or if you don't want to do that, just add a comment somewhere to the GitHub ticket or on Slack, and we'll try and help you out. Okay, so just going back here, I want to see all the different regions that exist for this product family to see how that works. So I can see there's those 2 regions, but this is all the regions that map this filter. What I actually want is all the regions that map to this additional filter too. Perfect. That's kind of what I expected, I guess. Global and US government, that's what explains these 2 different prices that I saw as well. So I figured out the price mappings between essentially Terraform parameters and filters that map to the Azure pricing APIs ultimately. So I think I'm ready to add some code. So to do that, we can go back to the contributing guide. There's a quick start section which mentions where you can add the files in the repo. So internal providers, Terraform, Azure, and I can see there's a couple of Azure resources already. So I'm going to copy paste this as a good template and add the new resource. So we add the resources after the name. So I think it was app service certificate order. Let me just go double check. App service certificate order, but there was a space between app and service. Let me just fix up the name. Okay, so this is the Terraform name. It's the full one for the resource, so it actually has Azure RM before it as well. The registry item, I'll talk about that in a second. For now, I just need to fix up this. So it's app service certificate order registry item, quite a long name. This is going to be the new one we're going to add in, and that's the basics of it. Then going to go to the registry file for Microsoft Azure, and I'm going to add it so we can actually run it. This list we try and keep alphabetically sorted, so that should go up here. That's it, add it to the registry. And next I'm going to add in my parameters. So I noticed there was a parameter here for location, and that seems it's required, and it says only global is valid. So this is the region essentially, or location as Microsoft Azure calls it. I think, I suppose if you're using the US GovCloud regions, then you'll get one of these. So, but it says it defaults, or it says only global is supported. So what I'm going to do is, the filter I want is global, capital G. So I'm going to create that there, and then I think I'll, just to be safe in case we do, when people who have GovCloud regions, they want to use it, I'm just going to fix it for that as well. So I think I can do has prefix. So if the region starts, sorry, if the location that is provided here starts with US Gov, I'm just going to override the location to be this other filter that I need. So the way Azure regions work is that even if a user inputs the location like that, West Europe with a space and capital letters, you'll actually get it come through as something like, where is West Europe? That. So those are the ones we can kind of just match on if we want to assume any input from the Terraform plan JSON. One of the other parameters we needed was product type, so we can figure out if it's a standard or wildcard. Now, this mentions it's optional, and unfortunately it doesn't tell me which the default is, so I kind of need to know that. For some parameters, you can see down here it says the default is 1. For product type, we don't know. So we're going to have to read some code from Terraform. I've already checked out the Terraform provider Azure RM repo. So there's one repo for AWS provider, there's one repo for Google, and there's another one for Azure. I'm going to search that repo and see what I can find. I'm looking for the resource file. That looks like it's it. And specifically, I'm looking for product type to see if I can figure out what the default is. The definitions are usually on top. There we go. There's the definitions. And we can tell it's defaults to standard. Perfect. So product type equals standard by default, and if d.get D is essentially the resource data that is being passed into this method or function, and if this exists, then I'm going to override it to be whatever that value is that was passed in, and I want to cast it to a string because it's a string property. I don't need that. Next up, we're going to add the cost component. So to do that, I can see we already have the name we want to use. So all I need to do is fix that up, and I want to put the product type in brackets so we can get either standard or wildcard. The units, the suggestion is to use a unit of months for this, but this said the prices are per year. The database, the Mongo database, also showed the same prices, so they're per year. So actually, this is a rare resource. The majority of, I think this is the first resource I've seen where the unit is not months or hours or something like that. It's the first time I've seen years. The unit multiplier is if this price is applicable to like a bunch of these. Like imagine for something like AWS Lambda, they are priced at I don't know, $1 per million requests. So then we would put in 1 million for the multiplier. But the majority of the times, the multiplier, you can just leave that as 1. I don't have an hourly quantity. I want to use the monthly quantity. Usually this would be like 1 because I only have like one of these that I'm using. But because the price is per year, I'm actually going to have to change this. So split, essentially divide that by 12. So we can show the, and I'll add a comment here, convert yearly price to monthly, because that's kind of a new thing. That will ensure that when we show the cost, we're essentially showing the monthly cost. So the vendor name I saw from my parameters is Azure. The service was something like Azure App Service. That's the filter I want to use for that. The product family was compute. The attributes, I want to filter on the attribute SKU name. Do I need a value or a value regex? Well, probably regex, because I noticed, I don't know if Terraform enforces this for the Azure. I suspect it doesn't, because the example, I tried an example before with a small w, and that worked. So I'm just going to play it safe and use the regex one. I'm going to make it case insensitive, and what I actually want to do is just the product type. So actually just going to do that. But the product type is just part of it, right? Yeah, so I need to add in the rest of the filter. So it will be something like standard SSL 1 year, and that will match case insensitive. In terms of price filters, I don't think I need any because each product I found had one price. I do see a purchase option, which is consumption. I'm going to have a quick look at some of the other resources that have been added with Azure to see if they use any filters. This one does. What about managed disk? That one uses consumption. It kind of locks the price, so filter. So if Azure add a different type of price, we won't this code won't break. I think I like that. I'm going to lock it down to consumption, so it only matches one filter. Sorry, it only matches one price. So that's a typo. That should be SKU. That's pretty much it for the resource. I think that should has one cost component. These all make sense to me, and I think they'll match. So add it to the registry. Next thing I want to do is to actually test if this works. So to do that, as we mentioned, the contributing docs, you can go to the examples repo in the main.tf. This is an example AWS resource. I'm just going to comment that out. And I'm going to add a provider for Azure RM. If you're doing Azure RM, I think you have to set, is it features or feature? I made a note of it earlier as I was prepping for this. It's somewhere here. Yeah, that's the one I want to add Azure provider block. And then I'm just going to use the example from the Terraform docs for this resource to see if I can get a cost estimate for this resource. So most of the time you want to add in some of these additional resources, but this specific one, I think we can just put in fake to get by like that. So now I should be able to just make run. You always want to run when you're adding a resource with a warning flag. So you get any warnings if there's any issues. Looks like I have a typo in the registry. Yeah, the package should be Azure. All right, string, did I forget to import? Is it strings? Yes. What am I doing? So yes, I want to match the location. If this location has the US government prefix, then I want that. Where am I getting region from? Region, that was a copy paste there from the example. I actually want the region to be set to the location parameter here. The parameter in the pricing dump is called region. That's the standard one we use, but I just need to map it to location. All right, that looks like it's running. And at this point, Terraform plan and Terraform init and plan are running. Unfortunately, those commands are slow to run in Terraform, but they eventually complete, and there is the price. So I suspect this is, if I multiply this by 12, I should be able to get the price I wanted. I think we round to 2 decimal places in the output. So yeah, that's fine. If I really want to, I can check the JSON output to make sure like the price or the cost is not just 83, it'll probably be 83333. So that's all okay. I'm going to then test just quickly wildcard certificate to see if that has the correct price too. Perfect, $25. 25 times by 12 is 300. It's what I expected. There's a small rounding issue because of the 2 decimal places we output, but if again you check the JSON, that'll probably be okay. So that's pretty much it. That's the resource added. At this point, the puzzle's been solved, right? So at any time somebody uses Infracost and they add this resource, the code you just added will be run, and the user will very quickly be able to understand what it is they will be paying for if they were to click on apply in Terraform and deploy that plan to Microsoft Azure, which is very awesome. We've just done a bunch of work, and we'll save a bunch of engineers having to go to these pricing docs and figure out what's what. They just run Infracost and they understand what it's going to cost. Okay, so as we mentioned in the contributing docs, the next thing I want to do is add a unit test. I can't remember if we have, I don't think we have a example unit test, but it's easy enough to, sorry, it's an integration test, because we're actually going to create like a Terraform block that has the resource I want tested, and then we're going to make sure that the right cost components appear and they have the right price hashes. I'll explain that in a second. So I'm going to copy the specific one, going to paste that there. It's got to be called the same thing. So Azure App Service Certificate Order Test. All right, the resource I want, I'm going to write two integration tests, one to check for the default, which essentially means if somebody doesn't specify the product type, that should map okay and work. So I'm going to call it standard cert and remove that. Then I'm going to do another one for product type is wildcard. Okay, I don't have any usage properties on this resource. The usage properties are ones that you would want to add to the usage file. So for things like storage or Lambda, or things where you want the user to be able to specify some usage parameter, and then you can use that as part of your Docker. What is Docker trying to do? You can do that. So I can get rid of that. I don't need that. And then that's just going to be the name of my resource. I want to match on that. I want the test to basically find this thing. And then in the output, I want to see SSL certificate standard for the first case. I think I put in, I think I defaulted it to capital S. So yeah, that should be like that. Where do we get the price hashes? Again, we go back to Mongo, and the concept of price hashes to help us such that when Azure or any cloud vendor, when they change their price point, so the 69, they drop it to like $60 or something, we want the integration test not to fail. So instead of pointing to a price, which it makes the tests kind of brittle, we've come up with a concept of a price hash, which is computed from different parameters. So I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to check that the monthly cost is a multiplier of that price that we find in that hash. So it's the same pretty much calculation that we did when we added the resource. I just want the same thing to be checked. So that's it. That's the first one covered. I don't have any sub resources, so I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to add a second one, which looks for the wildcard certificate. I want that test to work too. I did this one with small w, so that should match that one. And I need to find the price hash for the wildcard. So the bottom one is US government region. I don't want that one in my test. In my test, I want to use this price hash. So it's that. That's the same. We don't have a usage flag we want to pass in, but you can look at some of the other tests, and I think we have something like, yeah, there we go. Schema, we have this helper you can call that just says it's empty. Okay, so that's the test. I should fix this up. Azure RM app service certificate order. I think that looks good. So in the testing section, we mentioned that the unit tests are super quick to run. The integration tests, because they have to run Terraform, plan and init and things like that, and look at prices, they can be quite slow to run. So you don't need to run all of them locally. What you should do is just to run the one you've added or changed. And again, run it with the warning flag. So if there's any warnings to do with multiple prices being mashed or no product being able to find, or essentially some issues with the filters you've used, that'll flag it up for you. So I'm going to do that. Azure App Service test. Okay, that's the integration test running. While that's happening, I think I'm pretty much done. That test looks good. The resource we added looks good. That makes sense. So going back to the contributing docs, I'm going to send a pull request. We use conventional commits. So I'm just going to also just remember run make fmt and make lint as mentioned in here. I'm going to create a new branch. Just going to name it after the resource, maybe Azure, and I use getX. I've been using getX for a long time. You shouldn't add the changes to main.tf. This is just the example project that people use to test their things. I'm going to add my change to the registry, the resource file, and the resource test. Using conventional commits, I can say this is a feature for Azure, and this is the Azure, actually it should be RM, that's the proper Terraform name. That's that. I can also see the integration test pass. I'm going to push that branch, and my favorite part, which is create a pull request. So fixes that. Now that's probably what I should have put in my commit message. That would have been better. So in the contributing docs for adding new resources, if you scroll down here, we have this example pull request that shows you the level of details it would be awesome if you could add. So I'm going to use that as a template and populate the required details. So that goes up here, the name of the resource, which is that guy, Azure RM. And let's just format things nicely. It would be awesome if you put in the example that you ran, just so when we're reviewing the code, it makes it much easier. So I'm going to go to my main.tf file. I use that example like that. And the output I got, which I've wiped off the screen, but that's okay. I can just do that to grab that output and put that there. The usage file is, we haven't modified the usage file, but if you do, you should put that in. So you basically have one run without the usage file and then one run with the usage file to show that they're both working okay. This is not applicable. like that, and the pricing details. So any notes that you want the reviewer to know about the pricing, things that were kind of confusing or you might want to flag up. So I'm going to make a note that the Azure pricing page used same prices for non-gov and US gov cloud or locations, as they were called in Azure. These were different in the MongoDB, so I went with the Mongo ones. The status of this pull request, I have completed adding the resource registry or updating the resource registry. I added the resource file. I also added the integration tests. This one just wasn't applicable, so I'm going to mark it as not applicable. This you would use if you had to write some internal functions or things that you want to test with unit tests to make sure it was working as expected. There's no issues for this pull request that remain to be discussed. And the useful links, it's the pricing page. Actually, the useful links were in the ticket. So I think I could just link those up. Saves the reviewer one click. So there is the pricing page that I used, and that is the Terraform resource. Going to preview that. That looks good. The output, I forgot to grab that. Everything else, that all looks fine. And I'm going to put that there. The code, the diff, I'm just having a quick glance. That all looks good as well. And that is my pull request. If it's your first time contributing to Infracost, our bot will leave a check here so you can read and sign our contributor agreement, CLA, standard stuff. And also, if you have any questions or you want to mark this as draft and add comments, that's fine. You can also jump into our Slack if you need help. As I mentioned, the link is here in the README. That's pretty much it. Thank you for watching this video. I showed you how to add an Azure resource. You can do the same to add other resources from other cloud providers. And I look forward to seeing your pull requests. Thank you.